Okay, I'll call this Plan Commission meeting for December 10th, 2018.
Joe Zitzelberger.
Here.
Brad Zeman.
Here.
Brian Malish.
Here.
Tim Black. Chris Thomas.
Here.
Okay, first item on the agenda is minutes. Anybody like anything changed or look for a motion?
Second.
Motion by Susan Springman, second. Is that you, Joe? Second by Joe Zitzelberger. Any comments? Call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there anybody here that would like to make a public comment on an item that's not on the agenda for this evening? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. First item under new business, public hearing and discussion action on a request by Nordgear for site plan approval and conditional use permit for a 75,000 square foot addition to the existing building at 800 Nord Drive.
Chris, if we could have the applicant go through their presentation, we could follow that up with some staff comments.
All set?
Wrong one. All right.
Foreshadowing what's to come.
Good evening. My name's Wayne Whiting. I'm with Strang Incorporated. Our company has been retained by Nordgear to help them with the expansion of their current facility at 800 Nord Drive. What we're looking at for them is approximately 75,000 plus square foot expansion to the south end of their current facility at that location. This expansion allows them to expand their production operations as well as provide storage space for the necessary parts and materials they need to assemble the products that they manufacture for a number of companies around the country and around the world. The expansion that we're looking at, as you see in this current rendition from our cover sheet, basically is seen from the south, adds a production assembly area. It's the main pieces that you're seeing in the upper background, as well as storage space for their parts and materials. The southern piece here, where the signage is located, is really a new office expansion to support their operations at this end of the site and to allow for growth of the operations that they have at this location. Basically, we're looking at expanding parking as well to the south. If you can, I don't know if you can go to the next plans. Those are some of the elevations that we have. Kind of give you some, you can probably stay on that one, at least give you a sense of the site. The proposed expansion basically allows us to look at trying to get vehicle traffic around the site, as well as allow for parking for the number of employees that are part of the proposed addition. We're looking at adding approximately a number of stalls to the south side of the site and maintaining and expanding the current stormwater management system at the south end of the site to deal with the stormwater conditions of the impervious area created by the parking and the exposed expansion. Basically, we'll be retaining and expanding this parking on the east side with one-way traffic through that to allow for parking by employees. We're allowing for access. Most vehicle traffic for large vehicles will come in from the northwest part of the site. That would be the upper right on the screen that you're looking at. And then coming down around, we have several bays in the upper left portion of the building where vehicles will be backing into the facility for loading of materials, as well as dropping off supplies and material that are used in the fabrication of the equipment that Nordgear manufactures. There'll be an entrance on that south side for office staff and employees to enter the building and gain access. Because of the height and the change of grade, the main floor of the building is a continuation of the current main production floor. The office area, in essence, steps down because of the slope of the site down to the south. So we've accommodated and adjusted the site conditions to allow for those changes in grade. We are anticipating some retaining wall conditions to accommodate that because of the site conditions and the topography that we have on site. I don't know if you want to go to, let's see, landscaping. think it was one of the next drawings. This gives a little more detail on parking arrangements and parking sizes that we have for the site. That just gives you context for the current property. That's the next project, yeah.
Back here.
So, we have the landscaping, landscaping materials are in your packet as well. You should have that information when we submitted that to the Plan Commission review. But we at least give you a sense of the site and conditions from different perspectives. There's the loading bays on the left. This would be the southwest corner of the expansion. We do have a small loading area down below at the lower level. As you can see, this grade changes that we are incurring on this site because of the sloping topography. And then another view at the top really gives you a rendition of what that new office addition will be. So in essence, we're just looking for ways to, since the project kind of has two fronts in essence, an access. The current existing front of the building is not going to be modified. This project really just entails looking at the back of the building and providing a new entrance for staff as well as for folks to see something different. So we got sort of bookends trying to work through the design. It gives you a sense of the type of slope conditions we're doing on that upper right image coming down with parking. So the main floor is where that band is for the main production floor, and then the office is stepped down to allow for those grade changes. So we got multiple elevations that we're working through as part of this project. Some of the challenges that we had to work through. That should give you an overview of what we're looking for approval by the Plan Commission. Answer
So the
any questions?
approvals that they'll need tonight is approval of the conditional use permit in order to exceed for the height restrictions, and then approval of the site plan. I think we started the conversation with Northgear probably approaching a year ago in terms of what they were proposing to do because of the challenges of trying to make sure that it fit on that particular site without having to relocate to another one. They do exceed the parking requirements, which is good because there has been some parking issues out in that area. The landscaping, they're just slightly below our point system, and so that it will just take some small modifications in order for them to exceed our landscaping requirements. And then the lighting plan is I think you saw in Kent's memo, it's close. It's like at 3-foot candles at the property line. They gotta get those down to 0, which should take some minor modifications in order to do that. And then Kent pointed out a couple technical issues related to the stormwater. And really the biggest one is, in order to make it comply with the requirements, they had to go with some steeper slopes. And so we're fine with that at a staff level, and we understand that that's just the way it has to be in order to make that particular site work.
Mhm.
And also the CUP for the building square footage.
Yeah, Brian's just telling me that there's the CUP for the height as well as the size of the building.
And so within your packet, there's actually 2 separate conditional use permits that have been prepared if you're inclined to grant the conditional uses.
Okay, so first I need to open up the public hearing. Okay, so I'm going to open up the public hearing for anybody who'd like to address us on this. Tracy, do we have any forms turned in?
No.
Is there anybody who would like to address us on this? Seems like about 2 minutes. Okay. All right, so I'm going to close the public hearing. Commission members, comments? Susan?
My question, how many employees are gonna be added? This is a nice expansion for Waunakee.
Yeah. I know.
Overall, we're probably looking at 70 to 100 employees. I mean, we're continuing to add every year.
Right.
I mean, we've already added 25 this year, so we'll
It'll be
continue
about
that growth. And part of it is a new product line. A larger gearbox product is really driving us to the expansion, why our owners want to invest here in the US. So, yeah, at least I would say that much. So in the future, we'll have to look at multiple shifts. We already do 2 shifts, but we'll have to look at other things in the future as well. But yeah, it definitely will have, there'll be more people involved, more employees.
Can I just piggy on that? Do you know what your total employee account is there right now, roughly?
Yeah, right now, we're at about 320, 330. That's total office and shop floor. So will be, yeah.
Okay. Other commission members? Right, anything? Brad?
It's pretty well thought out. Looking at the grades, I was worried about the retention of the water there, but it looks like that's been discussed internally, so. Pretty easy going, egress in and out for the traffic is looked after, so.
Any commission members concerned about the exceeding the height restrictions or the 50,000 square feet?
The only concern that I would have that's even remotely related is on the east elevation, it's kind of empty. It's standard manufacturing space, but there's not a whole lot of character to it.
You're referring to the side that faces Culver's.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Side of the top image.
Need the large wall.
Yeah. But if that's manufacturing space, I don't know if there's a whole lot that you could do, you wouldn't want to
Yeah,
put.
that is,
big
yeah, that
windows or
wall
anything.
is, it's, behind it will be actual material storage space, so
Yeah.
we don't wanna put a bunch of windows there, that wouldn't look
Exactly.
good. But we can certainly consider, what we could do from maybe a color standpoint or breaking it up. I don't know,
Yeah.
I can't say right now, but we can look at that a little deeper if you'd like.
It is a big wall for people to drive by as they're coming in to the industrial park, but, and I'm sure there's something you could do that wouldn't be,
A big
Big.
Nord logo? Really, really big Nord logo.
could be
Yeah,
more
we can-
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Like
yeah,
that.
I understood. Well, we can look at that. Like I said, I don't know offhand what we can do. We did have windows in one portion of it, and when you look on the 3D view, you could actually see the racks
Oh, yeah.
there, and that
That's not.
doesn't look good.
Yeah.
So I'll just make the comment that it's great you're having success, that you have a new line and you want to invest in Waunakee still. That's great. Please tell the company that we're happy to hear that.
Okay.
And any of our successful businesses, we want to keep them here in Waunakee, obviously. And I would look for a motion one way or another. Do we need to have two different motions or just one?
I think if the consensus is that if everyone's gonna vote the same on the two separate CUPs and on the site plan, you could utilize the recommended motion that Kevin and Tracy prepared. The only thing that I would note there is, as opposed to one CUP, there's actually two. But otherwise, I think you can use that motion.
I'd approve the site plan and the two CUPs as drafted with the conditional staff issues raised are resolved to the satisfaction of the village engineer.
Okay, we have a motion by Susan Springman,
Second.
second by Joe Zitzelberger. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you doing business here. Thank you very much. It's a great place to do business, so thank you.
Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Okay, now we've got discuss and take action on certified survey map, site plan, and specific implementation plan for Boston Pizza, Kilkenny Farms Commons.
If I could just start, Chris, and say that we've had continued conversations with the applicant. And we're in a position now to have a change in terms of the staff recommendation and the recommended motion. And I'm just making you aware of it now, so that when we go through this with the applicant, that you're thinking about a couple of the things that we've had further discussions on. We pointed out to you that there were some discussions on the orientation of the building and the orientation of the parking and having parking between the building. We think we've found a solution to that would leave the building where they've initially proposed it. The only other two concerns that I think we raised at a staff level is the architectural appearance of the entranceway. We wanted that to be addressed. And then I think and the third one was, the water wheel. We wanted some more enhancements to the proposed water wheel. So with that, I don't know, Don, who's gonna be making the presentation on this? All right.
I'll start.
Thank you. I'm Paul Kradatsky with Jewel Associates. I'm the architect on the project. Tom Ball here is also from Jewel Associates, working on the civil engineering. The Kinzells are here. They'll be managing and owning the pizza restaurant, so if there's questions of how many employees, we've got answers, and I think you know Don and Jerry over there, they're ready to answer all the really important questions on the whole project, so. I think you went over a lot of the main points we were gonna touch on. I think a lot of the questions have been answered, and can walk you through some of the ideas for the project. I think you have the original submittal, and then we also brought with a thumb drive with some images. This is a black and white image of the
we got the
proposal
something
for the
better.
changes. I guess the main entry.
On my computer. Do you have the thumb drive with you?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Want to give it to Kevin? He's using his computer now.
no problem.
Sorry.
Glitchy.
You've got the black and white image, and you've got
Okay.
a little bit of color imagery, which we're still talking about, but it does add back in the red elements. So some of the concerns were the front entry, and those were some ongoing discussions with corporate imagery of what the Boston's Pizzas look like, and then the logo. Boston's Pizzas.
One down,
are-
Kevin.
and The owners are looking
I think
to
so.
find that connection between the corporate image, the very successful restaurant franchise,
Nope,
and
next
the
one.
very successful local area. So yeah, this is good. This, we can go down through. These will
Okay.
be our updated drawings, but if you scroll down, probably about 10 or 12 sheets
okay.
here. We want to get into the site plan. Yep. Yeah, start at the end and come back a couple for me.
Okay.
That's perfect. Recommendation was to bring in the gable end that we've used on other buildings in the area there, bring that into the entryway. And I think we're pretty close. There's figuring out the actual material, whether that's a stucco, an IPIS material, or a wood barn board, which we used over on the Animart, and painting that the red. Getting those elements in are important. Corporate, but then keeping the building as a unified look to it. So, yeah, go down to sheet board two. There we go. So these elements are pretty similar to what we had before, but as you get to the next page, changing the front here and maybe bringing that right down. I think that's where you guys were at, really thinking about keeping that as red right on down, getting the barn board in. So as we refine this image, I think we'll be in conversation with the Tierneys and the Kinsels on how that needs to be, and probably working with somebody here at the village level too on final approvals of that, and all the final materials, which some of them are corporate. You know, there's brick colors and things like that that are already selected. Are there any questions on the look of the building or the look of that entry? Is that getting closer? I think Ed, you had some of the comments there.
No, I think it's quite a good evening, by the way. I didn't mean to walk by and not say hi. No, I think it's going in the right direction. I'd encourage you to do more what you think is right for yourselves in Waunakee. I included some images that you can take to corporate and show them how contextually flexible they have been in other places. So I think we've given you some ammunition to make that even a stronger local vernacular, if I can use that word.
Yeah.
So, again, I'm not sure we need to be as red, unless it's Badger red.
There you go.
We're Buckeyes, so.
Oh, now it's coming through.
The restaurant will be Badger focused though.
But I think it's dramatically going in the right direction.
Put your pen down.
I feel like I need to write that down.
And Ed, could you spend some time, I think it's important, because where the staff was initially hung up was the site plan. And in terms of making sure that the parking lot that's on our along Highway Q has sufficient screening, so that when you're driving past Q, you're not looking at the parking lot. Ed? Yeah.
Well, I had added some additional comments too. So if you, if this is most appropriate from an operational and circulation standpoint, what you start seeing up north is, obviously, all the buildings can't be parallel or fronting on Q. So the landscaping and the screening and use of walls has been an integral part of the solution to mitigate. Obviously, we don't want to cover your building, we don't want to hide it so people don't come. But we feel if the, both the western edge and the southern edge could perhaps incorporate some stone walls, even to the degree where they might emulate some remnant field stone walls that are part of old agricultural buildings, so that we could 40 inches where you hide the bumpers and some of the asphalt. You'll see that it's a parking lot because you'll see car tops, but the asphalt won't have as strong a presence. And then obviously we don't want to hide your windows, things like that. But I think there's a way of creating this layered look. And not that we're suggesting you build a ruin that big, but if you could imagine on that right-hand picture, if you were to take a line and put it through those bottom windows above the grass, about 40 inches, that's what you see in a lot of places. You'll see the little break where the window used to be or the door, and you can offset them a little. I mean, I understand it's tight, but that in a combination with the landscaping would dramatically help reduce the impact of the parking lot. I think that's been the major concern for everybody. So if we want the building to work, we want the parking to work. And this here is what's going on to the north. You can see that even this much less of a screened use of walls that we're asking for, but this dramatically starts reducing the impact of the parking between the buildings. And this is also going to receive landscaping, so now all of a sudden you'll see the businesses, you'll see the gables, the simple gables, you see kind of this agrarian commercial building, and then the lower level in the parking is what we want to mitigate the impact on, the visual impact.
Yeah.
And you can see, and you know, Paul's and Tom have done a nice job. You can start seeing the language between these buildings, the roof lines, the material, and the pitch, and what they're proposing for Boston Pizza. So what we'd like to see is if the building stays where it is, that we invest and work with Don and Jerry, and they know how to build walls.
Yeah. And we are showing that in between the walking path and the property there, or the parking there, wall right up on that west side. And then the south side of the building is where there's the water wheel. I guess there's some discussion on that, but definitely looking at an element there. That element is there. The idea of that would be present from Q. And that is the backside of, basically, it looks like a little outbuilding.
Yeah, it looks like a well house or, yeah.
Which then houses dumpsters.
And those will have chairs and tables, outdoor seating,
The thought is that that could be
yeah,
an area where that would.
which will create a lot of,
Operationally, and it's just a gorgeous view south of.
that'll create a lot of texture and vitality, and you are gonna have a view to the south.
Yeah, and it'll be viewed from the south, so we're just
Well,
envisioning that
and-
as a nice little landscape, little patio.
6 months out of the year, you're gonna get, you know, some time where it's warm enough to sit out.
It happens.
And
Not
just to
today.
add to that, that's actually a Four Seasons room too.
Inside the building,
So
correct.
those windows open wide open, large
Yeah.
windows. Not only would you have the patio, but you'd have that, space wide
So
open.
indoor, outdoor. Are those windows or are they French doors?
Like a nano wall. Yeah, nano wall window system, yeah, so it's not floor too.
Not
see,
garage.
So
but-
it's table, almost
No,
table
it's
height.
the gate
Yeah,
pulled across, yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be a popular place on a February.
Stop that.
There's a fireplace in that Four Seasons porch too, so
Not as-
warm it up.
No, I think it's heading in the right direction.
And I think we had addressed a lot of the site comments. I do want to make sure if you had any questions there on some of the site things, we can address those, but I think a lot of that was sent in and may have already been covered.
Well, Chris, we have a recommended motion, but we certainly want to take any questions from the plan commission. Or if you want to hear our motion first and then take questions.
I would just point out a couple things quick. We met earlier. I wanted to make sure that we were good with our GDP and checked with our planners, and we are in compliance with that, making sure that we're good with that. Another important feature of this particular site is that it is the gateway to our community, is the very first thing people will see. So we want to make sure that it's a high-quality top building that's on there, and based on what the improvement that Ed has suggested and what you've come back with, I think we've accomplished that. And I also didn't want it to be where it was just a gaping parking lot that we were looking at as we were coming in. And with the suggested stone improvements with the fencing, vegetation, I think we can accomplish all of those things to make sure that the building is the focal point, not the parking lot. So I like where we're at with this right now. I am not excited about the red thing that they had originally put around the entryway. I'm not in favor of that. I thought it looked frankly cheap, in my opinion, but I think we're moving in the right direction on that. The other question I have is there, and I'm not a restaurateur, just to be clear with everybody in the room, I'm not. Is there any concern about having the small amount of parking on the side of the building? Generally with restaurants, I feel like when you have this type of setup, the entryway's in the middle. Is that unusual, or is, you guys know your business better than me?
I'll try and answer it, because I used to cook. But this, you're talking about this side?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is takeout. So there's a separate entrance there where you would come in and get a pizza if you've already ordered and come up and,
So there's actually two entrances into the building?
yeah, so this would be you're coming up, driving up, taking your pizza to go. So there's an entrance in there on that side.
Is there an entrance into the restaurant then too there? Or
You
just?
could, it's not ideal, but, so if you walked into the main entrance, you could go all the way to the, if you were going to get your takeout, you could go to that window through it. But we want everybody to go through the main entrance because of the hostess stand, greeting
Yeah.
aspect of it. Okay. So we'll have, 3 spaces that are just for takeout, for the convenience for the guests.
Okay. Other questions from planning commissioners? I know that parking is appropriate, we have enough stalls. Is there any concern that you're so busy with the lack of street parking, that we won't have any that's there?
Yeah, Chris, we thought about that, and if you remember, now it's not going to be ideal, but there certainly is overflow parking in the area. There won't be on the roadway going in, but on Waterwheel, there certainly is extensive overflow parking down in the parkway, and there'll also be parking on Simon Crestway.
So roughly a block.
Yeah, I'm getting flagged down from the back row.
The concern from the restaurateur is that those aren't being used enough, I'm sure. But they want to have their parking lot full and people walking far distances, but.
Absolutely. I'm just, I'm
But you're
trying to
right,
think
yeah,
of that, because Waterwheel
Yeah.
does take in some traffic, and, which
Yeah.
is good. But we don't have any parking really outside of the parking lot that's real close by.
Yeah.
So if that's a concern or not, I'll leave that up to the experts. There's 2 people with their hands up, and they both end in Tierney, so we'll let Don go.
Yes, when we did the overall master plan, for example, if you look on Waterwheel, we put a huge amount of parking stalls in there. They're built right now. The other thing we've got here is we have additional land to the east. There could be interconnection. For instance, from that parking lot, there's additional land going up to the point of Simon Crestway. And at least we have ways of there's options out there that we can accommodate different arrangements.
And I'll just add, Chris, there is a formula that our franchisor has with over 400 restaurants on the appropriate parking per restaurant. And they wouldn't sign an agreement unless we have the appropriate parking. So the number of spots that we have actually is ideal for the size of the restaurant.
Good.
So not a whole lot of concern there.
Okay. Susan?
What's the closest other Boston pizza around in the area?
East Lansing would be close. There's 3 in Michigan.
Far away?
Yeah, right now there's 23 in the States. There's over 400 in Canada.
Coon Rapids, Minnesota also.
Coon
What are
Rapids.
your hours of operation? Tell us just a little bit about.
So we'll open up at 11 for lunch. We don't do breakfast. And then stay open till 1 a.m. 7 days a week.
So tell us more about the water wheel feature. How's that gonna work or incorporate into the restaurant?
Sure. Don, you want me to talk about that, or Jerry?
Yes. We don't have the final detail yet, but there's gonna be a real looking water wheel. And it's on that little building. Anybody ever been to the Hyde Mill as you drive west? It's a cool little place. we kinda got the scale of it from the Hyde Mill. You could probably bring it up on the internet, it's kind of out near Spring Creek, so that's kind of what we based our proportions on.
But the functionality of it is, it'll be the, I don't know if there's a better name for it, but the dumpster, the garbage collection. So it'll just be kind of a nice way to help make the garbage collection place look good. And then where it's located, and Tom and Paul can talk better about it, but it's really handy for the garbage trucks to be able to come in and spear it. And, you know, a lot of times you go to a commercial area where garbage is an afterthought, and it's, well, you make it work, but it works really good, and I think it'll look good.
Yeah, from this side, the dumpster. From the highway Q side, and creating a focal point for the outdoor areas. It's just a key element. Simple. Yeah. Then a whole patio with the water wheel, and then a small pool there with a little heater. You know, the idea is that creates again, a focal point to that outside area.
Did I get the right
A
one?
lot of high school prom pictures taken out of that.
Okay. Other questions? Commission members? Or concerns? No? Joe? Good?
I had two and they both been addressed.
No, I'm good.
You good?
I like the revised entry.
When would you be open?
Pardon me?
When would you be open?
We're hoping for August 2019.
2019.
Nobody
With
in the
that, we have
community
a-
needs to know that.
What's that?
With that, Chris, we have a proposed recommended motion that Brian and I worked on.
It's actually two separate motions, one that would deal with the CSM and one would deal with the site plan / SIP. So the one related to the CSM would be motion to approve a certified survey map subject to final review and approval by village engineer. The second motion is motion to approve the site plan and specific implementation plan subject to final review and approval by village engineer, but the site plan and SIP must include one, barn foundation remnant wall that will screen the parking lot, and I think that's what Ed was getting at initially. 2, modifications to the entranceway, and 3, further enhancements to the water wheel. So
Okay.
in other words, when Kevin's looking at finally approving this, those 3 changes have to be part of the changes to the SIP / site plan.
So I'm just gonna ask, because I know that one of the people, the residents, had a question or comment. So I'm gonna open it up, but let's keep them to at least a minute or less.
It's Maria Pat, 1000 Wexford Drive. Is this Boston Pizza the same Boston Pizza that existed at Greenway Station a number of years ago?
It is, correct.
And it didn't last there,
It did not.
and the building was vacant for a time after that.
The building, correct.
And this is now Pizza Place number 7, and yes, I know you serve other things. I liked it. But I recall at the time that Pizza Place number 6 opened, there were complaints that were bringing in nothing but pizza. And so I just make that as a comment.
Sure. I'd be happy to address that.
Actually, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because,
Sure.
go ahead, talk about
So
I
that.
know there's a more extensive menu than that, but
No,
it
it's
says Boston Pizza.
No, it's actually a great question. Thanks for asking. So, and thank you all for working with us on this. So, myself, I've been in the hospitality industry for 17 years, working with Grey Wolf, and Kelsey has got hospitality experience as well. And after retiring with Grey Wolf, it was very important for us to stay in Waunakee, because we've been here since 2010, and it's our home, and we love Waunakee. And we did a tremendous amount of research on what we thought would be very successful for Waunakee and what would be a great fit. And we talked to a lot of different franchisors, a lot of different brands, and we fell on Boston's for a few different reasons. Number one, excuse me, it's very family oriented, and that's important for us. So not only is it a sports restaurant, but it's a restaurant or a sports bar, but it's a sports restaurant. And those 2 rooms are completely divided. So it's very family focused, kid oriented, a great kids menu, very, and as well as the sports bar side as well. So being in Waunakee, having entertaining families was key. And then the second thing, you talked about the menu. There's over 80 items on the menu. So when you think of a pizza place, I would encourage you to think more of a sports restaurant that happens to serve pizza. Because
That's
we
not gonna sell it for me, but that's
well, you know what?
beside the point.
We can't wait to
No, I know that.
entertain
I
you.
know that.
There's actually 12 pasta dishes. There's ribs. There's salmon. There's fish tacos. There's burgers. There's wings. So the menu is really, really good. And so I've visited over 12 Bostons throughout North America, and I've talked to several different employees that actually work there. And the number one thing, and I would ask them, what do guests love most about Boston's? And the majority of the time, it was the menu. So the menu's really, really good. So you just give it a chance. I understand
No,
your
I
hesitation.
understand the menu's
Yep.
good. I liked it when it was over in
Yep.
Greenway Station.
And then, real quick, the third reason we chose Boston's is because we really like the corporate office. It's a fantastic team, and they have agreed to let us really work on the atmosphere, to put our own flavor inside the building itself. So it's not like a typical brand that you might see with a Red Robin or, you know, those things. We can incorporate our own atmosphere. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna really tip our hat to Waunakee, and we're gonna celebrate Waunakee within the building itself. So for all of those reasons, Boston's was really the right choice for us. And we'll invite you out in August, and you can see it yourself. But we are super, super excited about it.
I'm only reiterating some of the things that were said when Pizza 6 came in.
No, and I'll be honest with you, we knew those concerns before we chose Boston's. But we have enough confidence in this brand and enough confidence in what we're doing moving forward that.
There's not a lot of history of Boston's in this area. So you guys may have that confidence, but if it's an unfamiliar place to a lot of folks, there's a risk involved. It's your risk, I understand, and the tyranny risk.
Yep.
But,
it's a great question, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I don't wanna not allow people to have their opportunity. Okay, so, Brian, those were really long motions that you read.
I think you could, Chris, somebody certainly could confirm, you know, motion to approve as stated by the village attorney. I mean, we certainly record these meetings and we have a clear record of what the
I'll make that
motions are.
motion to approve the recommendations by the,
Okay, there's two
Village
motions
attorney?
though. I mean, the first
Two
one's
separate
pretty easy. Motion to approve the certified survey map, subject to final review and approval by the village engineer.
Okay, is that what you're saying?
yes.
Okay, so we have a motion by Brad Zeman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Chris Thomas. Any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
You want me to read the other motion?
And then the second one could be based on village attorney's.
Sure, or I can just read it if you want me to.
Great, yeah, read it.
Okay.
Go ahead and read it one more
Motion to approve the site plan and specific implementation plan, subject to final review and approval by the village engineer. But the site plan and SIP must include 1, barn foundation remnant wall that will screen the parking lot, 2, modifications to entranceway, and 3, further enhancements to the water wheel.
Okay, do we have somebody making that motion?
Make that motion?
Motion by Brad Zeman,
I'll second.
second by Chris Thomas. Okay, any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you. Thank you for your interest in doing this and look forward to it as we go through the process, and hopefully I'll get invited in August too. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you, congratulations.
Yeah, I was happy to hear the Waunakee flavor and not anything Buckeye. That was important to me.
You're the game changer.
Where did I write that down? Right here. So, okay. Next, we've got discuss and take action on proposed signage for Fortify Bank, 1330 Montandon Avenue. Kevin?
Jason's been working with the applicant, so I'm gonna let him take this one.
All right, so the application here is to allow for new signage both on the cupola of the building and also on the end of the drive-through lanes. There's a bit of a building that extends out to the north there, and so there's a proposed Fortify Bank sign on that too. The site is part of sorry? Yeah, thank you. So the zoning is PUD zoning, and for the most part, that zoning refers back to the regular sign ordinance for the village. And the only real concern I had was with the amount of square footage of total wall signs. So both of these would be considered wall signs. And there's a limit of 150 square feet, so we asked for clarification of how much signage is on the building in total. And so they got us some additional information that confirms that it comes up just under 150 square feet. And so on signing area, we're fine. The sign ordinance says that wall signs can't extend more than 6 inches from the wall. And it's my understanding from the description of the sign that's on the end of the drive-through, that sign is mounted on a box, and the total depth is maybe 9 or 10 inches, and so that isn't compliant with the ordinance. My recommendation is that it should be acceptable in that situation because it's tucked in under the eave there, and so I'm recommending that you approve it by special exception to allow for that. The one other recommendation that I'm making is that, as proposed, the cupola signs, and so there are 4 sides to that, the leaf and the name, are proposed as backlit or internally lit with LEDs. And my recommendation is that only the sides that face the highway and face to the north, so east and north, be lit. And the ones that face south and west, which face homes, not be lit. But otherwise, recommend approval as proposed with that adjustment to the lighting.
Questions?
The cupola, as it stands today, has got windows in it?
It does.
What's the plan for how they're handling that?
So my understanding is that the windows will be covered with a panel system, a panel on each side.
And is that,
Are you the people with the sign?
They're the bank.
The bank. Sure. It's okay. Is it okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Hi there, I'm Monica from Appleton Sign, and then we have Jill from the bank. So we can answer any questions that you have. So what we were doing on the cupola was we were going to put aluminum over the windows and mount the letters onto that aluminum that's on there. Years ago, there used to be signs on all 4 sides of that. They were just underneath the windows, not real legible because of the size of the letters. So we're looking to increase that so we have visibility. And to address the lighting on the west and the south side, our plan was to put less bright LEDs in those 2 sides versus the other sides would have our full max bright white LEDs. So that's how we were going to complement the neighborhood there by toning those down so they weren't as bright as the other 2.
Okay. Questions? Susan?
Do we know what kind of light, if it's a cold or a warm LED and what number it is? Because that makes a huge difference in how it appears, and I couldn't tell you how it will look if you give me a number, et cetera. I just know there's a big difference in it.
Sure. So the LEDs that are going to be used on the north and the east would be it's a GE Max Bright. It's white. So it helps keep your white letters white. So that one would be a true bright, like a cool white is what people will call that. The warm color that you're referring to, that's more of like that yellow. People don't want their channel letters yellow if they're supposed to be white. So on the other side, it would still be a cool white, but it would be less lumens. It would be turned down. I would say we're going to do about half.
Process.
So and we have a meter that can gauge that, so we can adjust it as needed.
Other questions? Or concerns? So you're recommending that we don't light the 2 sides?
Yeah, I don't
The
think,
residents?
that was my recommendation. I don't think those sides are visible, or certainly don't need to be visible from the roadways that matter, meaning from the north and from the east, because you've got two other sides that will be visible. I think if it were lit but at a lesser intensity, that could probably address the issue, meaning it won't create a nuisance effect into the adjacent homes. I don't really see it as necessary to achieve the ends that the signage is intended to serve, which is to alert people that it's there, because again, I don't think that they're visible from the roadways. But it's probably an acceptable alternative, pending what the intensity is.
One staff clarification, because this sign that I have up on the screen needs a sign exception, that'll actually have to go through the CEU process, so that one will have to come back. The other one doesn't. I know when we initially had this, approved some signage and some lighting, and I think we had a requirement that the lights needed to be turned off by a certain time. You know, just the residential, it didn't, light up. I don't
So
remember
on
the
the
details
one
of that.
That's on the drive-through. What's giving it so much depth is the raceway that's behind it. If we need to shave a couple inches off of there, I can make that raceway more shallow when we manufacture it. It's not standard, that's okay. We can make a custom for this.
I don't think you're any opposition to it, but if we're gonna approve it, we have to go through the process.
It's procedural.
I think if I heard it correctly, the reason why it needs to go through the conditional use process is because it sticks out a certain number of inches, and if they're gonna, are you saying you're gonna shave it off so that they wouldn't,
If I could.
it would comply with the code?
Yeah, I was just trying to save from having to come back. If
Yeah.
it's only 3 inches and it's just, I mean, we manufacture everything in-house, so I would just manufacture it outside of our standard to be more shallow. What that purpose is for mounting and for running all the electrical. So, the channel letters, it gets weaved in and out in that raceway, so it's not, you don't have to have as much access behind that wall or canopy, which is what's there now. So we can minimize that if it avoids a whole nother
Meeting,
submittal.
sure, and process, yeah, and
It's
submittal.
simple, really.
So I think we're down to lighting, so I think we're looking at the plan commission for some direction on the lighting.
What would be the approach that you would take if two sides that are darker are not sufficiently darker?
So I
What are
think,
the options?
the guidelines that we would use is we would try to minimize it on those. So we can adjust that by different LED modules that we're putting there, the amount that we're putting in there. We have the flexibility because we're the manufacturer also.
Sure.
We build the channel letters ourselves. And, we use our max brights as our gauge and then tone it down from there, so.
So if there are residential complaints in the nearby area, whatever, that's something that you can come back and swap things out and,
We can turn them down more, yeah.
okay.
And is your intent, are you looking for architectural balance? Are you thinking that those are really visible?
They're coming from the south, so coming from Madison, it is blocked by a lot of the trees and the berm. There are a couple places where you can see the cupola as you drive that way. Also, we do want to have it visible to the neighborhood, the Savannah Village neighborhood, because people do make banking decisions based on what's closest to home. So we do want it facing that way as well.
Sure, though I don't think that people who live in the neighborhood need the cupola sign to know you're there. So,
Okay, so it's pretty simple choice here, I think. Approve as presented. Deaden which sides?
so
On the
South and east.
and
East.
west.
Or west, I'm sorry, west, yeah.
So we could say non-lit on those sides, or we could say reduced by
Dimmer.
50%?
I think it
Jim?
look weird if you have it on 2 sides
Yeah,
that aren't, front and back or side. It just, to me, having it all the way around would look more consistent, as long as you could adjust the light.
Chris?
You could also, here's the third option, you could approve it and then have, a provision that it comes back if we hear complaints.
Yeah, but I was, I mean, it's the risk that they have to take, but if we can get it to work, and if it doesn't work, you have to dim it. That way you can work with the neighborhood, and as opposed to saying yes or no now. I think if we try with the dimming,
dim it
what
or
you're
even off.
suggesting, and then you work with the neighbors if they have a problem with it.
So I'm just gonna throw this out there then. If we go that route, if we have one neighbor, does that constitute?
I think you'd have to have, you'd go through a process and you'd have to reconsider if you get a neighborhood complaint. I'm not saying yes or no, but you'd have, at least that person would have a chance to
have
be
to talk
vetted, and
about
it'd
it.
be your discretion again of whether or not you wanted to allow it.
And prior to this, when it was originally built, wasn't it signs on all four sides? Anybody recall?
Glass, yeah, glass with signs behind it.
So it's been glass since it was built, the windows, with signs below.
So even the,
Yep, there's channel letters on all four sides.
but even the cupola was lit at night.
Yes.
Yeah, so it did have light at night.
There was light there.
Yeah,
There
it
was
was like a
presence of
cupola
light
in a
out
public
there.
building or a church, yeah, or a bank.
But it was internally lit, so,
But it was lit.
but, yeah,
It was
yeah.
lit. It was a light source.
These are internally, this is internally lit.
It's all internally
Yeah.
lit.
Right, so it's not.
And the channel letters that were on there before were lit as well. So you have the two lighting, the light coming up cupola, and then you have the exterior channel letters that were lit up as well. They were underneath the window.
So the approval, I think should note that the sign on the drive-through should be a maximum of 6 inches in depth to approve it tonight. And then either without lighting or at 50% intensity on the west and south sides.
Let me ask what kind of lighting's by the ATM, because that's a security thing. When people are driving through, where is the lighting so that you can see what you're doing and you also feel safe going through?
There are lights underneath the building
That
all
come
the way
down?
around.
Okay,
There's soffit
Yeah,
lights.
okay.
and then that ATM where it's white, that is lit up as well.
That's, ATM's underneath, and that that sign is outside that drive-through, right?
It's an alcove. It's
Oh,
like
okay.
a metal alcove.
Yeah, right, okay.
That's the east side of the building, correct? And the drive-through with the roof is on the north side of the building.
The ATM faces 113.
Right.
Okay, so that's not facing residents.
It's north, and it
Right.
faces a berm.
Yes.
Yeah, that you can't see through, right?
Can't see it.
So if this approval goes through with the signage, does it max out the signage for the building? So if a new business would come in, there's no chance for them to get signage?
Well, they could use a monument sign too, in terms of a directory. That would be a way of advertising.
There is a monument sign there with enough spaces on it to accommodate tenants. I think, my understanding is that the front of the building, the main entrance closest to the street, doesn't have signage on it right now over the door, the way that the entrance to the bank does have signage over the door. So yes, if a tenant were to ask for signage over the door, that would require a conditional use special exception to go beyond the 150.
How much vacant space is in there? Don, do you still own this building?
First of all, just a good point, I think. When you build a bank, we look at it as two different buildings.
Yeah.
There's concrete walls go up to the shingles. We look at it as two different buildings. I'm looking at talking tonight, this is the bank. In other words, not tying it into basically the other building. And right now, we've got the Mexican restaurant, it's doing great. There's a great daycare in there on the main level. And we have an insurance company in there. And we have another company that's looking at coming in to the lower level as well.
And there's enough signage.
And that's Trinity
for everybody?
Dancers, by the way.
So
Pretty
you're not
awesome.
concerned about not having adequate, that's double negative, you're not concerned about a lack of additional signage if this goes through for your other tenants?
I would like to think that if you really go out and look at this, or look at it in Google Earth, the bank itself is like an individual building. They just touch at the corner. I don't know how that works, but it's the way it is.
So your ordinance can't see it that way. It's one building. However, from a practical standpoint, this aggregate amount of signage is not an issue. I mean, it looks good, it's well placed on the building architecturally, and if there were desire for more signage, especially in that similar manner, on that gable end over the doors, I think that would be appropriate, and I would recommend approval of the CUP. You would need to do it in that fashion to approve it.
So based on ordinances, and I'm gonna go to that, why are we preventing them from putting lighting on one side? Is there anything that states that we have to do that? Because it faces the residential.
I think that the only thing you've got is foot candle limits, I believe, but,
Because if it meets those, I don't see why we're.
Jason, that's
the sign thank you.
Which one are you looking for?
Just the,
Square footage or?
no, the lighting.
I'm just saying, because we do have other businesses in the community that have signage that's lit up that face residential. So why are we treating this any differently?
Yeah, Chris, I'm not seeing something I can cite on that, and I didn't in my memo. It was a practical suggestion, and so I would revise my recommendation there to say that that the suggestion to have 50% intensity on those with respect to them facing, those lights facing the neighborhood, would be a good practical solution. But I don't think the code requires that we limit them in that fashion. So, bottom line is,
Brian and I have heard just sidebar as well. We think there's some discretion there if you wanted to limit the lighting to no lighting on the side because of the residential and the effects that it's going to have on the neighborhood.
You don't have to,
Do
but
that.
you have
don't
the discretion.
You got
if
some
want to.
discretion in terms of that, regardless of whether or not it's black and white in the ordinance. But I think your point's well said, Chris. If there's other places in the community, we want to treat them differently, but I do think, we do think you got some discretion to limit the lighting.
If it was lit before, realistically, we're trading light for light, but it's making sure that it's not a newer, brighter white LED that's gonna suddenly show like a bright new sign. And there's that, I guess, level of light.
I'm assuming this is gonna be quite a bit brighter than what was there.
Here, it gives you
Is that fair to say?
candles.
Yes, I mean, every technology improves and improves and
that what
improves,
you're
and
looking
those pure white, I mean, it's the
Yeah.
best LED that's on the market is what we'd use in the
the one foot
sets.
candle.
Well,
It's larger than what was there.
3-foot candles at the front line, 1-foot candle at other lot lines,
Yeah.
3 feet above surface ground, and 75-foot candles per.
They're not going to get to the foot candles at the property line. Not
No,
with that
no,
lighting.
it's much further away.
No, you know,
No, don't want to get close.
So
Yeah.
my opinion
But
is.
we got a dark skies ordinance, so this
I don't
apply with dark sky? Maybe not, because it's part of the signage.
Are you okay with the 50% that we're talking about on
Yes.
one side?
We want to be respectful to the neighborhood.
Okay, so,
And on the other side of the token, you want people on the highway
Yes.
to be able to see the others, and
Yeah.
so they should be bright enough to stand out.
Right.
So, I think some balance on that would be a good solution that's appreciated.
Mhm.
based on that, is there anybody who would like to make a motion? You can't make a motion, Don. You asked the question, you can't put your hand up for that one. Is there anybody who would like to?
Well, it's to approve,
So we would be approving
As presented,
as presented with the
0 or 50%.
Stipulation of the 6-inch depth on the,
6-inch step on the,
yeah,
The light be modified to 6
modified to
inches,
meet.
to meet the 6-inch rule.
yes.
And that, the two sides be 50%.
The residential sides, the cupola lighting be reduced to a 50% output.
do we need to define which direction, west, east?
South
Tracy, you had written down what
South and
Jason
west.
In the
said.
motion, I just wanna make sure in the motion that we have it very
South and
clear.
west.
Reduce
and-
south and west lighting to 50%. Must come back if there are neighborhood complaints. Drive-through must be 6-inch depth or less, or need a CUP.
You wanna come back?
I wouldn't include the must come back.
Yeah.
Let's go for it.
We're
50%.
dropping the recommendation on the comeback.
Yeah, I don't want that.
50% reduction. What's a cupola? It used to be lit.
Motion by Susan Springman. Do we have a second?
I think
I think I have Brian, I got on that one first, so I'm gonna second with Brian Malich. Any other comments? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, initial consultation, Kilkenny Farms West General Development Plan and Certified Survey Map.
Mr. Tierney's got, it's his floor. I got it.
Excuse me, I was gonna ask this young lady, for that cutting 3 inches off, you're not gonna charge me too much extra, are you?
Good answer.
I heard custom.
Yes. Mike, we got it.
Say when I can put my.
Going back, when I was a kid, my mother used to go to Rosenberg's store on Main Street, and then she'd walk across the street and go to Miller's store. We had 2 grocery stores. And years ago, I was contacted by the Festival Grocery Store, and I was impressed with the fact they're a great store, as well as Hy-Vee. Here we are, and there's 2 great grocery stores want to come to Waunakee. This is Brian Bauman from Festival, and I just want to make sure that I told them I would do the best I could, and I know if you've got something going, that's your call. But we have a great grocery store, and Brian, go ahead.
Good evening, my name is Brian Bauman. I'm the Senior Vice President and General Counsel at Festival Foods. I'd like to start out by saying that until 2 years ago, I had spent the first 40 years of my life in Madison, so I'm very familiar with Waunakee. Lots of friends that are still here. And I've always heard, as Don touched on, the desire for a grocery store, a larger grocery store out here in Waunakee. And I know for a number of years, nothing seemed to happen. And then as Don said, all of a sudden, now there's an embarrassment of riches, and 2 great operators are interested in Waunakee. As Don said, we've been actually looking at this market for a number of years. We are a family-owned / ESEF company, been around for 70 years. We were started by the Scogan family in Onalaska. We started in the La Crosse area with 4 or 5 stores, eventually made our way across the state to the Fox Valley, and since that time have been spreading across the state fairly rapidly. We just acquired our 32nd store at the beginning of November. That store was in Mauston. We also have 2 stores that are slated to open next year, one being in Verona. Brian, how you doing? And Hales Corners in the Milwaukee area. We first really decided that we could make the move into this area a few years ago when we opened our first store in downtown Madison on East Washington. It was a new kind of store for us. It was a much more urban environment, and it's a different kind of shopper in the greater Madison area than what we've been used to. There was a bit of trial and error But I think right now, we've really found ourselves to be an integral part of that community. I think one of the reasons that we've had real success with that is because of our focus on the community. And that's something I wanted to touch on briefly tonight, because Hy-Vee is an excellent operator. They're large, they've got 300 and some stores, they're based in Iowa, they're an ESOP company as well, as we are. And we have competed with them on occasion over the years. I think one of the things that sets us apart, though, is that community involvement. And in one of the handouts I sent you, and is up here on the screen as well, it outlines kind of what we do in a community when we come to that area. One of the things that was so appealing about the site that Don has, and that he'd be willing to sell to us, so we would actually own that parcel. We would actually construct the building. We would be owners of this community, if you will, in that respect, is its proximity to the high school. We have a number of stores that are located near the schools, Onalaska area, De Pere area, Green Bay. We find that's a great synergy. We find it's a great first job for a lot of high school students. We offer tuition matching for young employees. And it's always amazing to me when I talk to the number of people in our company that got their start as a bagger in high school and are now a vice president or a manager or a director somewhere in our company. We have 8,000 employees right now. We tend to staff our stores much more fully than typical grocery stores. Our typical grocery store, and the store that we'd be looking at in the Waunakee area, is about 65,000 square feet. We really pride ourselves on what we would call the perimeter of the store. That would be produce, deli, meat, and a scratch bakery, which also a lot of stores do not have. Another nice feature that we offer in all our stores is what we call our tot spot, and that is free childcare for people while they're grocery shopping. Typically, that's staffed by a combination of retired individuals and college students. So that's been something that we've had a lot of success with, and our guests really seem to enjoy that. In terms of additional community involvement, one of the things that we're known for across the state is our sponsorship of fireworks programs. Prior to us even opening the Madison location, we took over sponsorship of the Shake the Lake. That was our largest commitment to date, and we've now re-upped to do that for another 5-year period. I believe we currently do, I want to say it's 13 or 14 fireworks shows around the state. We participate in parades. We participate in capital campaigns across the state in the materials that we've passed out. There's a list in there of that. Whether high school athletic facilities, community ball fields, you name it, we do it. We also have what's known as a brat barn at all of our stores, and that's available to nonprofit organizations, Boy Scout schools, things like that. They can operate that on the weekends. Typically, all the equipment, all the food is donated, and it's a great fundraiser. That typically, it's amazing. You'll see the reservation system usually opens up around the first of the year, and people actually line up to get their groups in there. So if we could do it more often, we would. But we do that on the weekends as long as weather permits. I think at the end of the day, from our perspective, we are a local company. We are a Wisconsin-based company. We've been a Wisconsin-based company. We do not have any stores outside of Wisconsin. Family-owned company and an ESOP as well. And I think that when I look at a community like Waunakee, and I've found myself inside the company one of the largest champions of the Waunakee market because of my experience growing up in this area. And it was interesting, 6 months ago, a couple of other executives came down with me, and I think it really blew them away at what kind of community you have here. And we would certainly love to be a part of that community. We really appreciate Don basically, I want to say, taking a chance on us. I know he has some experience, and his family did with our stores in the Fox Valley. And so, he knew what kind of operation we run, how important it is for us to not just be in the community, but be a part of the community, and how we treat our associates and really value them. And that's just a little bit about us. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. I know, as Don said, there's all of a sudden 2 competing proposals that are, 100 yards apart, right? So.
Questions? Any of you might have? Susan?
So, what would be your time frame for building a store?
I guess if you asked me in a vacuum, it would be sometime probably in the first part of 2020. Assuming the infrastructure needs that need to be done could be completed, we could move that up. It's tricky, as essentially right now you're talking about 2019 for all intents and purposes with the holidays coming up and the weather where we're at. But we can move as quickly as infrastructure and weather allows. I think one of the other, up here too, I think of the presentation is just some renderings of what we consider our new prototype store as well. And there's some pictures in the packet, and I think it's the second of the 2 presentations that came over via email. And there's some architectural renderings of what the storefront would look like, front and back, evening as well as during the day. One thing that I'd also like to mention is that we, and this was touched on in a couple of the other discussions tonight, we acknowledge the fact that that is going to be located in a residential neighborhood. That is actually our preference where we locate our stores. On most of our stores, if we can, we tend to locate in residential areas. A number of our stores are actually former Kmart's that we demolished and then built new on. So we are very sensitive to making sure that we can blend in and can be a good neighbor in terms of configuring our design, configuring loading docks. We can limit delivery times to a very narrow window. Truck traffic is fairly limited. There's only one large semi, otherwise most deliveries are done by a panel truck, so it's not very disruptive.
So what is before us tonight?
So to be clear, we're not looking at 2 grocery stores across. It's probably one or the other. Is that fair to say?
That's fair to say. I think that it would be fair to say that if there were 2 grocery stores of the size that we're talking about, it would be bad for everyone. It would be bad for the village in the sense that both of those stores, I think, would ultimately be underperforming and would probably be getting short shrift, and it would not be a rising tide lifts all boats in that situation. It would be, you'd have 2 languishing stores 100 yards apart.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear to the general public.
Yes.
That this is not looking at 2 stores in that.
Correct.
So, okay. I think what we're looking at is the change to the GDP in this area.
Yeah, the initial consultation is really the modifications to the GDP.
Does it change, or is this a GDP?
It would be a creation.
It's a new
Correct.
GDP.
Great.
It's it's not a change.
But I think Chris's point is fundamental.
Correct.
In other words, it's before the plan commission as an initial consultation, but there's also a significant village board impact here based on what Chris said. In other words, if you're only gonna have 1 grocery store, then and you right now you have, this is an initial consultation on this GDP. You've already had, before the plan commission, an initial consultation on the GDP associated with the proposed highway project on the other side of the streets. Necessarily, if you're only gonna have 1 grocery store, you're gonna have a grocery store on one side, and the GDP that's been proposed to allow for a grocery store on the other side, whichever side that may be, would have to be amended, because you wouldn't have that grocery store. So, to the extent that helps at all,
So, one thing I'll say in regards to this is we have two fine grocers that want to be in our community, which is a testament to our community at this point. Second, Hy-Vee is probably a little ahead of where a festival is in the process. It doesn't mean we shouldn't consider, and in order for us to even consider this, we'd have to consider this GDP. Because we never know what's gonna happen with either side of things. As you were stating, it's hard to pin somebody down to say, you will build this building at this time. You're not gonna really have a grocer that's gonna state that.
Well, and I think one thing that we've tried to do, and we found because of the inherent risk in that, and I'm not gonna speak negatively about Hy-Vee, we've dealt with them in the past and in situations where we both had interest in similar sites and locations. But one thing I think that does differentiate our plan is our plan to actually purchase the property, build the store, and own the store. We're not relying on a landlord, a lease, anything like that. I mean, our plan is to come in, purchase the property, and construct the store. A lot less cooks in the kitchen, if you will.
I think
Oh, we can
Hy-Vee's
talk
fine,
about
right?
We can talk about anything that's certainly been discussed in an open session, and I don't know how Hy-Vee operates in the country. I know that they've had discussions with village staff, and in fact, they've said in open session that if their project moves forward, they would own the lot across the street too. So in this particular circumstance, it's a similar situation.
Guess we understood.
So,
One thing at staff level, Chris, that,
did you say
that
at
we
staff
asked,
level?
at the staff level, what we've been thinking through is how does this relate to that neighborhood? And we'd like to see some more detail fleshed out on how the Peaceful Valley Parkway or Holiday Drive and the residential on the other side of the Holiday Drive or the Parkway is integrated with some fairly intensive commercial uses. So that, there's some compatibility issues that it sounds like you've been able to work through, but I'd like to see how that's worked through so we could get better comfortable. That's been raised, I think, at the staff level, that how do you put houses across the street from, this intensive a use? And how does the parkway work? Not that it can't be done, it sounds like it's been done in other places, but how would you do it here? And you're not taking any action tonight, this is just a consultation. It's in the joint planning area, it's got to go to the joint planning commission tomorrow as well.
So what action do we have to take tonight?
No action tonight, you're just here listening.
Okay. I'll just make the comment with what you're saying with regards to residential. I had that same concern, but I also realized that we had two grocery stores that were right across the street from one another in our downtown with residential around them.
Right.
So I don't know that that's necessarily a killer, but I also have to look at how our traffic flow is gonna be on this side. There's a lot of things that we have to flesh out on our side.
And just so everyone knows, this is very much just a placeholder. We're open as to orientation, configuration. I mean, obviously, we have some preferences as how we like to see a store laid out, but at the same time, typically our interests are aligned with the village in the sense that we don't want there to be a negative perception or anything like that. We want it to be a positive for the village. We don't want to, especially neighbors. You do not want unhappy neighbors, so.
Agreed. So those are my general thoughts, and if you guys wanna share anything, or what you are right now?
Looking at this site, I always had concerns, the Hy-Vee site with the traffic flow in the high school, and I know those areas of discussions. I think this might alleviate some of that, if this option would come into play. So it's been my own personal concern, just knowing that traffic for all the students getting in and out, traffic flow for that side of Woodland, and all that side for those neighborhoods, that Hollywood, what do we call it, Holiday?
Holiday Drive.
Yeah. I was reading about that water main as well. They've had some flooding in the past, and went out there and looked at those buildings, and I'm sure that all will get discussed in the civil portion of the play. But elevation-wise, where it's sitting, the Hy-Vee, I've always worried that you'll be looking down at the property a little bit and see the roof more than you would see anything else. So Just my thoughts.
Chris, anything down there?
What's the size of the Madison store?
The Madison store is about 50,000 square feet, and we have found that we have stores ranging from 35 or 40,000 square feet to 80,000 square feet. 80 is just, we have found is way too big for us. I mean, unless we have a market, like a lacrosse market, where we'll have 85% of the market share, it doesn't work. The sweet spot for us is 66,500 square feet is kind of our prototype, and that's what the renderings there and it shows. It allows us to do what we do in terms of fresh cut, have our full deli, full service meat, scratch bakery, tot spot, things like that. So I don't know what the Hy-Vee proposal was, but typically they're a hair bigger than us. So
Do you see yourself offering up the community room and
for sure,
light beverage area?
yeah, and we do that all the time in our downtown store, and yeah, that's something that we would definitely do.
Joe, any questions?
What would you expect for, I guess, first hours of operation around here?
We start with a baseline of 24 hours operation, but we certainly modify that based on community desires and community wants. And when I say 24 hours, for us, we always have people typically there overnight anyway, stocking shelves, things like that. So for us to be open, it typically only requires one additional person to essentially run a cash register. But again, if the village has a preference one way or another, we're flexible with that.
And then, as far as employment goes, how many people you're looking at? For those
I would
stores?
probably say a store like this would at least be a couple hundred people.
Okay. And what portion full-time, part-time?
I'd probably 60-40 or 70-30 that part-time. It would really depend initially how we would staff up. I would say 40% full-time.
Susan?
Well, we've heard from citizens that they would like to have another grocery store in addition to the good one we have here in Waunakee as well. And we did that study, I don't remember how long ago it was now, where we had seen that, 60% of our grocery dollars left Waunakee and went to another community. So hopefully we can keep that in the community. And
The studies that we did, actually, was even higher than that.
is even higher. So
Mhm.
it's not that, so you're keeping people here.
Correct.
By having a second grocery store, which I think is important for
We spent a lot of
citizens
time
to know.
educating one of our, when we will have a couple of different individuals do market analysis and site analysis for us, one individual in Seattle. So he was not familiar with the location at all, but to explain to him how shopping patterns really do work in Waunakee and how many of those shopping dollars were leaving the community.
Right. So, we as a village board or commission, we would like to see, I think all of us, a second store. I think both Festival and Hy-Vee are quality. We would benefit from having either of them. What I want to see is one built. And I want the option for someone to commit and move forward. And I have a little bit of a problem of us deciding who wins and who doesn't, because to me, that's the market. Unless it's in a location that is totally wrong. It's in a spot where from a planning standpoint, you just would never allow it. And I think there's pros and cons to both sites. And so, I'm open to allowing it to move forward as an initial GDP and see what happens. You're not gonna see both of them built. And there's gonna be an amendment somewhere.
Brian?
No, I like a lot of what Sue actually just said. At this early schematic level, I don't know that I've got a
There's
lot,
lots.
to hone in on. I'm curious, it's getting to be a bigger intersection in town. You've kind of got a lot of face between Woodland, Q, we've got sort of your concept models or elevations here. I'm curious to see how those play out, how they tie to elevations of the site. But that I think is just sort of procedural as we go through. I think generally speaking, I'm supportive of the idea, the concept. I think either side, whether it's, you know, east or west side of Q, where we end up with a grocery store, not particularly worried about. So I'd like to see it go forward and see where it goes.
Planners, consultants, any comments?
No.
Just, what's the public comment that gets involved in this discussion? I mean, what happens in the community? I'm just curious.
Because we're gonna go through this whole process, there's gonna be multiple public
There
hearings.
would
Because we wanna
be-
make sure that
opportunities.
happens.
There,
Oh, yeah.
yes, and I can think of, well, I mean, I'm just gonna talk about the high V right now because, well, high V, there would be zoning, so you would we would typically have public hearings before the plan commission, the joint plan commission, and then we have the statutorily required public hearing before the village board. That would also apply to the Festival Foods project. At this point, we have a request for TIF assistance on for the project on the east side of Q. That requires a public process before the plan commission, before the village board, and before the joint review board. So for either project, there are gonna be multiple opportunities for public input.
The other thing I want to point out is that in this project, the grocery store is not planning on incorporating a convenience store or gas pumps. Hy-Vee is, but there is the possibility of pumps and convenience at the lower intersection of Peaceful Valley and Q. So they'd be separate versus together. That's a difference from a traffic access and how it interfaces with the neighborhood.
To be also, one point that, to make clear, Hy-Vee is not requesting the TIF assistance, the developer is requesting the TIF assistance. So that's a big.
For the public improvements,
To be
right.
distinct, we make it very clear
Yeah.
on what's happening with that. So, okay.
Good point.
Any other questions? So this was just a consult, so we don't need to have, you know, other than kind of a general, yeah, let's move forward and continue considering this. Is that
That's what we heard.
what you heard?
At
That-
their risk.
Everybody good with that? Okay. Perfect, thank you.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it.
Okay, next we've got discuss and take action on 4-lot CSM Larney Wake of Kenny Farms.
Yeah, this is a pretty simple lot line adjustments here, taking 5 lots and turning them into 4 lots. And staff would recommend approval.
Any questions? Nope. Comments?
Mr. Action,
I'll move to recommend approval of the CSM to the village board.
Motion by Joe Zitzelberger.
Second?
Is that you, Brad?
You got it.
Second by Brad Zeman?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll call the question. Any other comments? Okay, call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Waunakee Westport Joint Plan Commission items.
It's all Waunakee tomorrow, and we talked about all 3 items already.
Do our planners need to have any, do you have any questions for us? Those who are gonna be there? Anybody?
No,
Okay, then we look for one more motion. Motion by Susan Springwind. I'll give Brad the second on that one as well. Brad Zeman. Call the question, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Thank you, everybody.